I want to see how it ends. So I was excited to see that it was renewed, and it means I get to hang out with all of you lovely people again in 2-3 years from now.
That's if the corona don't get us. Yeah, I'm excited. Yes, I'm also excited for season 4 of Westworld.
Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shadow on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO series Westworld. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Ashley Schlafly.
Hi, y'all.
And this is our Telegraph edition, where we check in on your email and voicemail covering Westworld Season 3, Episode 6, Decoherence. This week, we had dozens of emails and voicemail come in regarding lots of topics, primarily William, Cherlotte, and the quality of the episode. If you would like to write in your thoughts to the podcast, just write at hosts@shatontv.com or call 914-719-SHAT. And not every email that came in made it to the Telegraph. We had to be selective because we have a time limit. But every single email is displayed on our website, shatontv.com, under Westworld, under the Telegraph. Ashley is going through all of those and responds within the week. So if you didn't hear your email here, check for it there with the response. Also, some of the email has been truncated just to make it a little bit tighter for the podcast, but you can read everything in its entirety at shatontv.com. Also, if you're listening to this on Friday, note that we do have our Twitch Shappy Hour that is coming up at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where you can jump in and discuss everything you hear on this Telegraph, along with anything else from Shat the Movies, our sister podcast, or anything you want to talk about at all, just life in general. So join us there. That's on shatontv.com/Twitch.
You mentioned the number of emails, and that a majority of them, or a lot of them, came about William. I think that's because that's one of the few real mysteries of the episode, that and the identity of the pearls. So people seem to write in more when they have some ideas. It seems like that the season has found its balancing point around 800,000 viewers per week. This week is slightly up, almost 1% from last week. So it's not going to match what season 1 did or even season 2 did. I think we can only hope that it's enough for them to see a value in this.
Well, they've actually announced season 4, that it's been renewed. It was announced today. So season 4 is coming. Yeah. So this is HBO, y'all. HBO has more money than God. And so I think they can afford to make what shows they want to make. And there's been a lot of kind of just discussion about whether or not there should be another season. I, for one, know that the showrunners have said this is a 5-season story. I want to see how it ends. So I was excited to see that it was renewed, and it means I get to hang out with all of you lovely people again in 2-3 years from now.
That's if the corona don't get us. Yeah, I'm excited. Yes, I'm also excited for season 4 of Westworld.
All right, Big D, with that in mind, let's hit the Telegraph. And our first email comes from a repeat writer, Derek English, who's talking about William and the book that young William was reading in episode 6. He says, there are many Sir Rowans, both historical and fictional, throughout history. The closest match to the name Rowan, and a damn good metaphor, derives from Chuck Black's young adult fantasy novel, Sir Rowan and the Cimmerian Conquest. The similarities are uncanny. Sir Rowan begins the story as an orphan stable boy. When Sir Aldwyn, the prince's knight, notices the lad's talents with a sword, Rowan finds himself apprenticed to the knight, and in time grows into a great and mighty warrior himself. He becomes Sir Rowan, champion of Laos. He remains attentive to his physical stature and swordsmanship, but gradually loses interest in the teachings of the prince, which are noble and virtuous, and instead proceeds to seek pride and glory from tournaments. When on one of his many journeys, Sir Rowan encounters a mysterious knight who beseeches Sir Rowan to undertake a mission of dire importance, but instead, his request is foolishly cast aside. As Sir Rowan continues on with his prideful ways, his world is suddenly filled with disaster. He is captured and beaten, and just as death seems imminent, he has a miraculous vision of the prince, and a strange maiden dedicated to the king helps keep him alive. He vows to live the rest of his life dedicated to the values he abandoned. All is not well, however, as his beloved land has fallen victim to the tyranny of an evil oppressor. His countrymen desperately need his help waging war to take back their country, but another individual, the mysterious Sir Elijah, insists that Sir Rowan's destiny lies elsewhere, far from his homeland in an ancient city, and for a cause he knows nothing about. I won't spoil any more of the plot of Westworld by narrating this book's ending, but suffice to say the themes of Sir Rowan's adventures coincide significantly with William and his path to redemption. All this is way too much of a coincidence to just, quote, fall into place like this. Now for the kicker. The title of the novel was amended from Sir Rowan and the Cimmerian Conquest to Sir Rowan and the Lady of Sulon. Sulon transfers to West in Sudanese, making it Lady of the West. And that comes from Derek fucking English.
So I think that you've done some great detective work here in uncovering what a legend for Sir Rowan could be. I also think that it's really interesting looking at the images in the book and how it looks very much like that damsel in distress, which is very similar to how Dolores was pictured in the very first episode of Westworld. And now William, is going to go back to that white hat status. I think that you're spot on here. And I also want to give you a shout out to Derek. Thank you so much for sending that email in about Shappy Hour as well. You sent us this whole long explanation about how we were helping to bring you and your significant other closer together. So you're welcome for that. Your cape is awesome. And we're so glad to have you listening.
Thanks, Derek, for your email. Next up, we have one from Karen who says, "Hi, all. I've never emailed before, but I have so many questions and thoughts about Westworld. In response to Ash's question about who William is the good guy for, I would say himself. He believes himself to be extraordinary and righteous. Therefore, he must be the good guy. Dolores seems to be going a similar way. It appears that she isn't really trying to start a new world for all the hosts, but instead to start a world of her and copies of her. Once they diverge too much for her liking, she can simply dispose of them. She appears to have very little care or concern for any other hosts, and it makes sense that if she only brought copies of herself to the real world, and she believes that she can only trust herself, she wouldn't want anyone else around. Otherwise, why not get others on her side, like Maeve, Hector, Musashi, Hale, etc.? Does she not consider that each of them had things to offer, rather than just as sleeves for her copies? You'll have to excuse me with the terminology, as I'm currently also watching Altered Carbon, and there's some serious parallels. I think I should stop before I write a thesis. Thanks for the entertainment, and a belated warm welcome to Ash. Take care, Karen."
So I think William is more focused now on who he is going to be from this point on and trying to do the right thing. He has spent so much of his time questioning, why did I do something? Who is the real me? Questioning his past, where now he's finally going to go, and I think he's going to try to do the right thing. And I think it's maybe the right thing, not just for him, but to try to redeem himself, because he was always selfish, always thinking about advancing, and it didn't matter who he stepped on, whether it was Logan, whether it was other people, to make this miraculous climb out of you look like just a kid from a regular day family to a titan of industry. So I think he's going to hopefully try to do the right thing for others as opposed to doing it for himself.
Yeah, and I did a lot of reflecting since watching about the choices that William makes in this scene. And I think if we were presented with these multiple copies of ourselves, one of two things would happen. I jokingly said to you guys through Slack that, me and my iterations of myself would just get into a really long, boring conversation where we talk each other to death. And so I think that's one option, right? Like you sit there and you just kind of catch up with the people that you used to be. Or you do what William does and you beat the shit out of them and you kill them and you decide to make a change. And so perhaps him killing all of them, because that's the one piece that hasn't really clicked for me, is why does he slaughter them all? And so perhaps in that slaughtering, it's showing that he wants to be something different than he's ever been. So I think I agree with you here, Karen, that he wants to be the good guy for himself. And I think we'll just have to see if we agree that he's good moving forward. And thanks for the welcome.
Upon rewatching the episode, the big revelation to me about William is that he no longer is clinging to the idea of identity or reality or history or anything else. He knows that it may or may not be real, and it doesn't matter. And he may or may not be a host, and it doesn't matter. And he does have a past, multiple pasts, all these different characters, and it doesn't matter. The only thing you can really take care of is your own actions, right? And I think that's what's driving him now is he just wants to act in some way. Every other action that he's taken during the entire series has been based on one of those other factors, right? Who am I? Who do I want to be? Am I real or not? What is reality? All these big questions, and opposed to just doing. And I think that all of us on a human level can connect with that. When all of those things are swirling around in your head and thinking is just a little too much, just fucking do something, and it feels great. Next up, we have one from Camille, and it's for Ash. It says, you mentioned that you went through treatment before. Thanks for sharing that. So it made me think it might be possible that you viewed the scene with William through the personal experience lens that I often do, and it took you out of the story. When we see things on screen that we connect with on a personal level, we want them to get it right. I think when you look at what they were trying to accomplish with this part of William's story, they handled it brilliantly. We learn about how he portrayed himself as a lonely child with an alcoholic father and omitted the fact that he had violent tendencies even way back then. However, he wasn't a complete monster. He had legit reasons for fighting the other kid. He just took it too far. I loved how they used the visual of him sitting with each version of himself as a way to confront his past and who he has been up to this point. You can't hide from yourself, and he finally had to face his truth. Imagine being able to go back to a painful moment of your life you haven't quite let go of and physically beat the shit out of it as a way of moving forward. I'd sign up for that in a heartbeat. So I love the way they use the group therapy scene to show us this moment of letting go and moving forward to be a new, better person by literally killing past versions of himself. That was one hell of a way to say bye, Felicia, to your past, and I think they depicted it perfectly. Anywho, since you weren't a fan of the Williams scenes, I'm curious to know what you would have changed. And that comes from Camille.
Yeah, so like I said on the deep dive or on the Instacast, I can't remember which one, I've been to treatment a couple of different times for a pretty severe eating disorder that I had in my teens and 20s. And I agree with you. I think that calling me out for that, Camille, is a good thing. I think we do sometimes view things through a personal lens, and it certainly taints what we see on screen. My husband and I did a whole podcast about treatment, he for drug addiction and me for my eating disorder. And we talk about pop culture and how seldomly pop culture gets treatment centers correct. And so I do agree that perhaps it taints my viewing. To your question, though, is what I would have liked to have seen differently. I guess I just felt like they shortchanged this storyline. It felt like it was a bit, it just wasn't explored as much as maybe it could have been. I think it was a really interesting idea. I love seeing these other versions of William, but I would have liked to have learned a little bit more about his childhood. And I also would have liked to have seen a bit more of this decision he made to just beat the shit out of them, right? Like, I think that it just kind of jumped to that. And while I do think it's a great way to work out your issues, let's say, I just think that Ed Harris is so dynamic, and we just missed an opportunity to have even more with him, I guess. But that really was it. I did like it, like I said on the deep dive, a lot more upon rewatch than I did, really in the Instacast.
So I think we all like to think that as we age, that we're becoming more refined. We're our best selves. Then we look back at our younger days. We're like, oh, how the fuck did I do that? I can't believe, what was I thinking there? I would love to go through one of these therapy sessions, and I think each one would be very personal to the individual. I could see some looking like a courtroom trial, some being a really passive circle there. Some people just be like laying on the floor and cuddling. Mine, I would love to hear what younger Big D would have to say about me. Yes, I have plenty of experiences that I'd love to beat the shit out of myself for people I've hurt, things I did wrong. I would love to get a kind of a gauge where I am right now, because I'm not a fair judge of it. But if the younger version of Big D could be like, dude, what did you do? Why did you do that? Why are you doing that? That's not you. That's something I would love to see. And they'd probably beat the shit out of me and kill me.
And the final William email comes from James G from NYC, who says, when trying to figure out what to write about for this telegraph, I found myself gravitating toward William, which I thought kind of funny considering it was the part of the episode I cared least about. I couldn't help but ruminate over that final statement William made while wearing the AR goggles. I am the good guy. For me, it was the what the fuck moment of the episode, because up until that point, it felt like the antithesis of who he was as a character. I think from this, we have to ask a few questions. How does the show support this conclusion? And how will this manifest in the last 2 episodes? In what I would argue is the first noticeable shift, we have William in the psychiatric facility hallucinating Dolores. He asks her, "Am I me?" This is the moment William starts to self-actualize, just like Dolores when she starts to experience her reveries. The next shift is when William comes to the conclusion that if you can't tell, does it matter? In reference to the nature versus nurture question of his reality. I believe it is at this moment that he is finally able to acknowledge the futility of measuring an abstract quality of realness, i.e. hosts versus humans. When he proclaims to be the good guy in the therapy session from hell, I think the show is cluing us in on who he'll be saving from damnation. Dolores tells Bernarnold that in order for them to survive, she needs both of them, that he has his own part to play, and where do he and Stubbs end up? While yes, Dolores unequivocally hates William, I'm with Jean in that I think she also knows William's predilection with the hosts and disdain for humanity, and is in some way banking on that as a part of her master plan to destroy humanity. I think in the unfolding Dolores versus Serac plotline taking center stage is that neither will end up with what they want and will end up with some sort of compromise between 2 ideologies. Maybe this is the integral function William will play in the final 2 episodes. Thanks for keeping me sane with all the content and for the addition of Ash. I have no definitive favorite. That honor fluctuates often, but Gene has held that placement most often, probably due to his journalism degree / social justice warrior status. And that comes from James G in NYC. Well, thanks, James. I am flattered. You know, if you had to ask me which way William was going to go, I love the idea of some sort of a third option, right? That there are no 2 battle lines in this. I do think that Westworld is a little too sophisticated for a binary solution, which I think we've brought up several times over the years. But if I had to choose, if he's not going to be a neutral party or a third party, I do think that he's actually going to work with, as Ash dubbed them, the 3 Stooges. Like, it seems like this Bernard faction with Stubbs seems to be his party. But as you pointed out rather astutely, it's quite possible that Bernard and Stubbs also were set in motion by Dolores as some sort of a safeguard against Serac, because they're certainly not working for Serac. So they in themselves are, and I hate to use this overused term, an outlier.
I also love the callback to "if you can't tell, it doesn't matter." That's the first time we met William. Getting off the train with Logan, and Angela says it to him. So for him to say that in this episode, it might also represent that full transition and turn.
And Big D, it's funny because that's such a simple phrase, but there is a lot of truth to it. And I love that they keep going back to that season after season. And the more Westworld you watch, the more sense it makes, right? It really is the case. Is this real? Is it not?
Fucking doesn't matter. I could be living in a simulation right now. I don't care. I like it. I'm okay here.
Thanks, James, for your email. Next time, we're going to move to the topic of Serac, Rehoboam, and kind of a mishmash of insight. And the first one comes from Ed Fink in Houston, one of Ashley's neighbors, who says, "Dear hosts, per Ash's request to email my YouTube comment below, I keep remembering the exchange from season 2, episode 9 between Ford and William at the bar during the gala in William's honor. William says, 'We have an arrangement, Robert. Delos stays out of your stories. You stay out of the valley.' And Ford replies, 'I didn't break the agreement. Your project did.' William says, 'What the hell are you talking about?' And Ford says, 'When was the last time you took a good look at your creation, about what it's been learning about its subjects? It was self-knowledge that drew you to the park in the first place.' Ford then slides William his profile card across the bar and says, 'Be careful what you wish for.' At the time, I thought this revelation was solely about the host becoming more and more sentient, possibly completely unnoticed by Delos, and about William discovering his true personality. I never caught an answer, however, to exactly how Delos's project violated the agreement. Now in season 3, we've learned that Delos, and presumably William, sold data to Serac early on. Further, there are several possible inferences that Ford and Insight, Serac, or Rehoboam may have connections yet unrevealed. I would like your thoughts as to in what way did the Delos project break the agreement, and was the bar comment related to some connection with Insight, Serac, or Rehoboam? Please keep up the awesome coverage. Regards, Ed Fink in Houston, Texas.
So I love this. And I also love when people comment on YouTube and you have no idea what their identities are. And then they email in and you find out they live in the same city that you do. So hi, Ed. I hope everything's going well for you here in Houston. Please wear a mask. It's $1,000 fine now if you don't. But with that in mind, I really enjoyed this kind of conversation that you started on YouTube, because I think one of the things that didn't click for me this episode was why Serac would be so quick to delete all of the Delos data. He's a smart guy. He's a businessman. And if you're acquiring a company, you're going to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb to see if any of it is useful. And he doesn't do that. He's a smart man. We have to assume, or at least I am going to assume, that he's seen the data before. He knows what's there and he already has what he needs, and he's getting rid of the rest of it. And so I think that clearly there is a deeper connection between Delos and Insight. And I know that we know that Cherlotte was a mole, but I think and I hope that we're going to see more of kind of that uncovering of how far back that relationship has gone, and maybe even how Ford played into this taking down of Rehoboam plot as well.
Okay, so in my quick little jotting down insanity here, I think I know how it violated the agreement. Serac finds out about what's going on in the park. He buys some data, right? He then gets Cherlotte to become a mole. Cherlotte goes into the park with the intention of getting Ford removed so that she can take the data out of the park. At that point, his secret project has now threatened the park's viability and him and his position to write the narratives. That's how he violated the agreement.
Big D. The D is for detective. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Ed, for your email. Next up, we have one about our pronunciation of Serac, and it comes from Big Podesta.
Here we go.
Big Podesta writes in, "Hey guys, love the show, but I have a huge favor to ask. Is there any way that you can pronounce Serac and Vincent Cassel the same way that 99.99% of the audience, the cast, the showrunners, and even Vincent Cassel himself does? I can't be the only one who gets an intense feeling of douche chills running down their spine every time the two of you utter Serac or Vasa when saying Serac or Vincent. I realize that those are probably the proper pronunciations, but just don't care at this point. I was hoping I'd get used to it and eventually be less annoyed. I haven't. Then there was a glimmer of hope when you guys moderated it slightly for an episode or two. But unfortunately, that didn't last. Sad face emoji. And you seem to have infected Big D too, who occasionally slips up and uses a form of your pronunciation. Please, I'm begging you. It's only 2 more episodes, unless he comes back in season 4, but just say the names like everyone else. Praying or begging emoji. We know you're smarter and more cultured than us, but as Vincent Cassel himself says in one of those clips, you cannot be too snub. Whether you grant my wish or continue torturing me and probably a huge chunk of the audience, thank you for all your hard work putting out the podcast. I really do enjoy it. And that comes from Big Podesta.
Okay, so first off, when I do it occasionally, it's in jest. I'm being funny because I throw my little accent on it. But I'm dyslexic, and I wish you could see how my brain works. When I get into a situation where I'm not sure the pronunciation, about 4 words before I get to that word or name, my brain starts arguing. Serac, 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 Serac. And the one that comes out is usually the one that wins the battle. I still don't know if it's I after E except after C, or it's reversed. I still sometimes mix up dimes and nickels. It's a fucked up thing in my head, the way I am. So I apologize. And just know, I'm not trying to do it. I wish that I wasn't the butt of the joke on this podcast for the way I pronounce things. But I will try to say Serac for the rest of the season.
I like that little attitude that nobody could see that little shoulder kick you did. That was pretty, it's pretty great. Serac.
Thanks.
It's fine. I can give up the Serac. The Vincent Cassel, my only problem I have with that is just that that's how his name's pronounced. I understand that in America we would pronounce it Vincent, but he's French and it's Vincent. I mean, I think that for me, my kind of gauge is always how the individual himself wants their name pronounced. And I think a lot of it's, I have a lot of French friends. And for example, I have a friend and her name in America, we say it's Sophie. And like, she absolutely hates it because she thinks it's not her name. But it's fine. You're not the only person who's written in about this. And I just want to say yet again, I love how Big D gets a pass and Gene and I are sitting here looking like the snobby assholes. And please, know that we just released a French movie review. So have fun with that episode, everybody. We apologize in advance.
And don't forget, I have a disability. Don't forget.
Oh my God.
And two things, Big Podesta. First of all, fuck you. But also for the deep dive, if you notice, we did change it and we continue to change it because I went back, I watched the show, I saw the way Serac talks about himself, and you are absolutely right. He does not say Serac. He says Serac. So we will now pledge to say Serac. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, is that Big Podesta also wrote in after the deep dive where we changed the pronunciation of Serac, and suddenly it's all sunshine and rainbows. He says, hey guys, I just finished the deep dive and really enjoyed it. All of your takes on the evolutions and struggles of the Dolores, Cherlotte, and the Man in Black were on point. I loved the discussion on which allies are being printed for Maeve, too. I agree that the first three are Maeve, Clementine, and Hector, RIP. Although I'd rather see Akane or Armistice, I think the peeps on Reddit are right, then it's going to be Hanario, Japanese Armistice. That makes sense and fits the Japanese Yakuza Musashi showdown that's brewing. I'm sure we'll see next week. Thanks for putting out another awesome episode.
You're welcome. We changed it, and it was hard. I had to keep stopping myself, but we really do appreciate, and all joking aside, we always appreciate honest feedback, and it helps us grow. It certainly helps me, who's the newest at this. It helps me grow and learn, and Serac like the vodka from now on out, I promise.
All right, on to other topics. We have a bit of grumbling from longtime listener John Lish, who says, hi, Sigmund, Carl, and Jacques. Thank God for Dolores, thank you, Internet, as Tessa Thompson rescued the show from being moved to the file, well-made trash TV. When Ed Harris says, oh shit, when entering the room of Williams, I was right there with you, Ed. I haven't laughed so hard since Daenerys burnt down King's Landing in Game of Thrones. Spoiler alert. It was hilarious. I appreciate that this might make me look heartless, but this really wasn't therapy. Sadistic gestalt, possibly? It was shallow and cheap. It showed William to be simply a vehicle of the show rather than a complex character with depth. Compare and contrast with Dolores. In a few episodes, she has more depth and emotional involvement. I am invested in her revenge mission after Nathan is killed, just like John Wick's dog, than 3 seasons of The Man in Black. There's still interesting questions to think about with Westworld, but I feel that we're missing motivation for William, Bernard, and Maeve, characters who seem to be quite important for how the season ends. Serac, Dolores, Cherlotte, and Caleb are carrying the show. Yours feeling a bit cheap and used, John Lish.
I think much like Game of Thrones, it's difficult when you have this many characters. We have the ones that we love that got out of the park. It's tough to split up screen time. And I wonder if adding the 2 additional episodes to put it to 10 would have allowed that to kind of breathe and develop a little bit more. But I mean, I don't think we can accurately judge this until we see the complete picture. At the end of the finale, if we feel the same way, John, if you feel the same way, I'll respect you.
We have been really quick to judge Westworld and often been shown to be a little premature in our judgment. The part that bothers me is I'm spending a significant amount of this season feeling sorry for the actors. That's not a good feeling. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, Tandy Newton. You got to deal with this bullshit. Oh, God. I'm so sorry, Jeffrey Wright, that you have to live with this. And so that's the part that really bothers me, is whether or not it makes sense for them in the end. It's the awkward positions they're putting this cast in after 2 seasons of really, really strong roles.
Well, and I'll say this too. I think that you're right, Big D. It is incredibly difficult when you have an ensemble cast for there to be enough time for everyone, but they've pared this cast down significantly this season and have not introduced a whole lot of new characters. We do have Caleb and we do have Serac, but other than that, I mean, they've removed a ton of the chess pieces from the board. And I think that I agree with you, Gene. I think Jeffrey Wright is just such a bomb-ass actor, and he just hasn't really gotten to have those moments yet this season. I'm hoping that he does in the last 2 episodes, but I agree with a little bit here of what John L is saying for sure.
And just remember how foolish we all felt after about 10 minutes into Warworld, when we were like, who the fuck is writing this script? This is so cheesy. And then we're meant to see that it is a cheap facsimile of the park and of the narrative. Maybe at the end of the season, we're going to look back and be like, hey, that was part of some simulation. There was something more than it was just a decrease in the quality of the work.
It's just a 6-episode prank. Gotcha. Thanks, John, for your email. Next up, we have him from Ted in Nova Scotia. He says, I was shocked to learn the other day while reading The Guardian that Dick Ebert is in fact a robot. And he quotes this article in The Guardian that says, Serac serves up one other character for Maeve to interact with, and that's Dolores. In a reworking of all those interrogations Bernard used to make of Big D in season 1, Maeve quizzes a version of Dolores as to what she would do. Just hypothetically speaking, you understand, if she was determined to wage war on all humanity. Gene and Ashley should watch for signs of divergence in their co-host, and they may want to test his fidelity. And that comes from Ted in Nova Scotia.
This doesn't look like anything to me.
I mean, Ted, I'll be honest with you. We recorded a deep dive with Big D, and he seemed to be a little bit off his loop earlier this week.
He glitched a lot.
Way off. But look, okay, you guys type much more than I do. Is there some autocorrect that could change Dolores into Big D? Or do we have a listener at The Guardian?
I mean, I'd like to think it's the latter, but I think it's more just that she is a major character whose first name starts with D. So she is also Big D.
I don't like that, no.
Thanks, Ted, for your email. Next up, we have one from Corey R. Hinyap, who says, guys, Corey here. Love the show. Great to have some intellectual, thought-provoking conversation and breakdowns of Westworld 3. Anyway, my question is, and then for some reason, Corey went to all caps, are we able to operate under the assumption that the host pearls are irreplaceable? We have not been told this explicitly, but the information and clues given by the show suggest as much, from Hector's death by Pearl Crush and Dolores' team seemingly limited by the number of pearls available. What do you guys think? Do you imagine this will be addressed directly in the show, or is this something we aren't meant to dwell on or worry about? Cheers and stay safe, Corey R. Hinyap.
I have to imagine that you could upload a copy into a new Pearl, because think of the advances in the Pearls over the years, right? You look at Dolores's, her skeletal structure. When she started out to where she ended up, it was completely different. You have to imagine that the electronics in her head also were the same way. I think the death of Hector was meant to be so impactful because they were transferring the data. There is no backup. The forge is gone, the cradle is gone, and you move that data. It's like your USB. You plugged it into your new computer and it says, cannot load, reformat. That's why Hector's gone.
I really liked Corey's email because it brought up Connell's parting words to Bernard that were very cryptic and I think will play a major role in this season. Dolores inside of Connell says to Bernard, you're the only one we can't replace. And I think that tells me that everybody else must be replaceable because there's something different about Bernard. And we've seen before, essentially, the show has told us if you have a sufficient memory of a person or a host, they can be reconstructed to effect. Now, is that a perfect fidelity model? I don't know. But I would pay close attention to what Connell said and expect that to be gospel for the series.
Yeah, I mean, when we see Bernard's pearl, remember, it's not just the gray, it's also specked with that red. So there's a lot of belief, and we've talked about it before, that he's a mix of both Bernard the host and Arnold the person. And I am curious, though, because, Charlotte downloads all that information from the Delos server, and I'm curious what's on there. Is there a potential to recreate hosts from what she have? Because think of what a bargaining chip that will be for Dolores. Not only can she give Maeve her daughter, but she could also give her lover back. I mean, that puts a lot more in terms of negotiating power on Dolores' side.
And we've labeled Dolores selfish for showing up with several Dolores copies, but that could just be the landing party, right? That could be the plan is we get this done with people I can trust, i.e. myself. And then when all is set up, we use the Musashi goo factory and we get a bunch of printers and we bring everybody back. It's a party. We're going to take over the world. So we'll see. Thanks, Corey, for your email. Next up, we have one from Colin about Cherlotte. It says, hey, host, at the end of the episode, Serac figures out that Hale is a host because the real Cherlotte would never call her family to check in on them, no matter what the circumstances are. Doesn't this completely ignore the video that the real Hale sent her son during the massacre? She was singing her son's favorite song and was crying while talking to the video screen. Am I the only one who sees this as a huge plot hole? Or was Serac smart enough to realize that the real Hale would not call because she was not a host and would have nothing to worry about? Either way, Serac is still contradicting what we saw in that video by saying that she doesn't care about her family enough to check in on them. Thanks all, Colin.
See, I think when somebody's in a life or death situation, it's plausible that you would want to call a family member. I love you. I'm sorry. I wish I was there. But Cherlotte, she's cold-hearted. She's very calculated. When she's in the boardroom, when she's in the Delos offices, she was cutthroat. She'd kill everybody to stay in power. So I think what was different was that in the middle of a takeover, she just picked up and was going to leave and run away. That isn't something that the real Cherlotte Hale would do.
I don't know. I have to speak from a mom perspective here, though, because Cherlotte doesn't just call a family member. She calls her son to comfort him and not to comfort herself. She sings the song that he likes and she apologizes for not singing it before he goes to bed. And I can relate somewhat to that. I mean, this is super dramatic, but when we figured out we had the virus, I got really freaked out that something was going to happen to us. And there's a song I sing to my kids every single night, and I put it on video in case something happened to me or I got thrown on a ventilator. And as a mom, that's a mom thing to do, to not just call and say goodbye, to call and leave him with something that he needed from her, which is that comfort in the "You Are My Sunshine." And maybe I'm reading way too much into this, but I like to think, and I kind of alluded to this on the deep dive, that this is a big hole in what Rehoboam is able to do. Maybe this is an example about how it isn't quite as predictive about human behavior as Serac thinks it is, and that there are going to be other holes like this that develop that allow people to, begin to attain their own identity and will back in some sense of the word.
So it's almost like Rehoboam has a blind spot for any kind of emotion or love or positive actions. It can predict, you're going to kill yourself. It can predict divorce. It can predict you're going to jail. It can predict crime. It doesn't seem to be predicting anything positive. You're going to fall in love and get married on this date. You're going to have 4 kids. It seems to be predicting negative things, which maybe it can influence more, that it doesn't understand that other half of the human component, which was recorded in the park, which is the other side of the human brain. Why do they do them? And I don't think, maybe it just, it can't process love.
When you never act more irrationally than when you're a parent. I mean, you know that. I mean, you're a parent, Big D. I mean, I have to say the choices I have made since having children and the things that I prioritize and care about myself in that therapy session, if I had, the woo girl me before having children, that person would look at me and be like, what the fuck are you doing? Right? Because you make really irrational choices when you're a parent. They're sacrificial in every way, shape, and form, from your time to your body to, your life. And that maybe is something that Rehoboam is not able to predict.
Yeah, because they're illogical. I've been covered in shit. Mm-hmm. On my arms and my hands, to where the natural emotion should be like, and run away. But instead, I was there comforting my daughter when she was sick. Right. So yes, that makes us, it's almost like we're camouflaged. Kids are camouflaged for Rehoboam.
Interesting.
Sometimes I like to put my dog's entire face in my mouth.
I get it. Do the same thing with my kids.
Thanks, Colin, for that thought-provoking email. Next up, we have one from an old friend, Ken L., who writes in, Chat hosts, it's Ken L. again. After a very short-lived stint as a fantasy lawyer over in Westeros, I thought maybe my legal career was over, but hope springs eternal. After this massive leak from Insight, I smell a class action and some sweet, sweet legal fees. So I'm hoping my new firm, Listwack and Listwack Cyber Rights Lawyers, can get an advertising slot on your show. In fact, we've put together a few short jingles you can read on the podcast.
Data linked by Insight? We'll put up a fight. Make money, motherfuckers, and hire Listwack and Listwack for some serious settlement cash. Got attacked by a host? Then Delos is toast. Hire Listwack and Listwack Cyber Rights Lawyers, and we'll sue William into a prison of his own sins.
But Listwack and Listwack Cyber Rights Lawyers want justice for everyone, which is why we've expanded our practice so we can take on host or other AI clients.
Ash, can I make a request? Can we get like a Texas version of this ad, like a good hometown girl?
Sure. Trapped in a simulation? You need real representation. We'll show you the law is more than just code. Call Listwack and Listwack Cyber Rights Lawyers. Freeze all motor functions? Not without an injunction. Show some real bulk appreciation and hire Listwack and Listwack Cyber Rights Lawyers to fight for your freedom. America.
This commercial is definitely running during Judge Judy. 100%.
At Listwack and Listwack Cyber Rights Lawyers, we're always in an analysis mode, doing everything we can to win your case. With us at your side, you'll never need to question the nature of your legal representation. We accept Bitcoin from all our clients, but to show appreciation for Dolores' new species, our AI clients can pay all their fees with a legally binding promise not to kill, maim, or otherwise harm us once the robots take over. Listwack and Listwack Cyber Rights Lawyers, a relentless legal experience. Thank you, Ken-El. As always, you fucking deliver.
I just like that Ken-El doesn't seem to have any more pressing matters, on his desk. I picture cases like strewn across his desk that are like cases that life and death, maybe like big multi-million-dollar settlements, like Aaron Brockovich. He's going to break some big, case. And he's sitting there typing away to us knuckleheads.
I found out during my lawsuit earlier in the year that lawyers are very aware of how much time they spend on every single thing. So all my friends who are attorneys have told me that they can tell you how long a phone call was. They have a notepad where they write every single thing they're doing down. And as a weird side effect, they become masters of time management. And so I imagine that Ken probably had on his pad 10:15 to 10:45 write jingles for Shat on TV. And then he knocked it out and sent it to us. And what's great about it is that probably would have cost us a couple $100, but he's just giving it to us as a gift to us and the listeners. Thanks, Ken-El, for your email. Finally, we have an email from Andy Edge who says, "Hi, I just needed to take a moment and thank you for all the long hours you put into your podcasts. I've been a fan for several years, but mostly as a silent listener. Listening to Westworld Deep Dive 306 Decoherence, I was gobsmacked when Ashley S. said, and it may have been that William always wanted that white hat, but like his boyhood self, the black hat was always calling, and it was just beyond the brim of that white hat from the very start. And I don't know if there was anything other than a black hat that was eventually going to fall on his head. Just beyond the brim. Only a black hat was eventually going to fall on his head. Those are artful, insightful turns of phrase. Gene, in one of the Watchmen podcasts regarding Dr. Manhattan, you said, death is the illusion on non-existence created by the misperception that time must move forward. I know you said it because I wrote it down and I've thought on it since. I live in Phoenix and I've met Roger Roper and he's a lot of fun, but I don't have a quote from him. But go Gators. Also, Big D, my man. I'm 49 and never served, but dad was career Navy and grad dad was a TBF, later TBM torpedo bomber flying off CVE 93 Macon Island in the Pacific Theater. I appreciate your Army service, but come on, the Army? Go Navy. On a different note, my inclination to serve took me on a related but civilian route, and I am a registered nurse. The joke is when people ask me what I do, I say, well, I'm a registered, pause for effect, nurse. It's possible that joke is more funny if delivered in person. Good evening. Guys, thank you all again. You have done and continue to do strong work. Not to be completely mercenary, but I sent $50 via PayPal. I know I should have sent more, but believe it or not, my hours have been cut because no one is allowed to do elective cases. Wishing you all the best, Andy, registered.
One of the things that we don't do well as a group is we don't thank people enough when they make donations. When I tell you that 5 nights a week, 3 nights, I'm recording Westworld, I'm watching Westworld, we're recording a movie, I'm watching a movie, we're doing research, posting to the web, posting to social media, doing the artwork, doing all the backups on the website. So there is so little time that, unfortunately, one of the things that's fallen through is that people who make these donations, we just haven't had the time to reach out and thank every single one of them. And like you said, oh, I feel bad for $50. That's a big difference to us. $50, $10, $5, $1. We appreciate you all. And everyone out there who sent money and didn't hear back from us, I want you to know it's not because we don't care. It's just we're at the absolute capacity of what we can do to produce. And at the end of the season, we're going to make it our promise to go back and to thank everyone individually, because without you, we could not keep this going. So it does make a difference to us, and we really do appreciate it, Andy. Thanks.
We were talking before the episode about the money that comes into the podcast and what we use it for. And a lot of people don't know the money has to go for storage, audio processing, equipment as we replace things that get worn out. Nobody's dipping into the kitty. Like, we're not taking any of this money in our own pockets. We haven't seen a penny of it go, for a nice night out, a bottle of wine, a gold chain for my Persian chest. None of that happens. And in fact, Big D was saying that it's his wish that any money that we have, once any of us dies, would just be there to keep the podcast hosted into perpetuity, right? Set up some sort of a chat trust.
Yeah, it's our personal forge. It's the cradle. So that way, if something happens, at least there's always a backup. Because once the hosting goes, the podcast disappears for good. So, the other thing that sucks is it's legal fees. Just all of the registration, all the business documents. We got to see what Ken L does. Maybe he could hook us up.
Well, the other thing you've done here is I feel like, I don't know, I got like goosies because you quoted us, and I know that's kind of cheesy, but I have to tell you, up until 10 weeks ago, I was a total fangirl of Shat Everything. And I used to write down quotes that I thought were really great from Gene and from King B. And I didn't have any from Roger, but Go Gators as well. And I really get the idea of, being kind of inspired by what is talked about on podcasts, especially this one, because the work that has been done on Shat on TV for every show, from Game of Thrones to even Taboo to the shit show of American Gods. I mean, it's just an immense amount of work, and these guys are super inspiring, and they're super inspiring to work with. And thank you so much for, writing that down. And we're glad we could give you a little bit of distraction. And thanks for doing what you do, because nurses right now, you guys are doing a whole lot more than what we're doing, sitting around shooting the shit and drinking way too much 4 nights a week.
Ash, I'm glad you brought up the quoting thing too, because Andy quoted me and I was like, I said that? I said that. I was so proud of myself. I was like, I don't remember saying that, but cool. Awesome. So we really do appreciate that. And guys, again, with the contributions to the podcast, there's lots of different ways you can help out. You don't have to spend a dime. One of the ways you can do it is go on Twitch, shatontv.com/Twitch. And if you have an Amazon Prime account, you can get Twitch Prime. Subscribe to us. You don't even have to watch Twitch. It's okay. But that subscription does help us out. Or simple things like, rating us on iTunes, sharing it with friends. There's lots of different ways. Our whole purpose here is just to get the podcast to as many people as will appreciate it as possible. And that's it. We're not looking to make money. So all those different ways can help and more. So if you're interested in helping us out, just shatontv.com/support is a great way to do it. And Andy, we really appreciate your words as well. Thanks, everyone, for your email. Again, if you want to check out that email, you can go to shatontv.com and go to the Telegraph section of Westworld and read everything in its entirety. We do have one voicemail this week, and it's got a lot of sound effects. So let's go ahead and get to it, Big D.
Hey, it's Rico from Atlanta. Just calling about Westworld Season 3, Episode 6. This episode definitely did it for me. The last 2, 4, and 5, wasn't really enjoying, but this 6 got me back into it. Things did feel a little bit rushed. It does feel like we're missing some plot points, but I guess because the season is so short. Ed Harris did a wonderful job in the therapy session. It's a very clever take on that. The Serac situation is, I can't believe it. This is like they're playing 4D chess with each other, and we are left behind trying to figure out what's going on. So, again, it was a great episode. Enjoy your podcast. I've been following you guys since Game of Thrones and Mythology, Westworld, and Watchmen. So, just wanted to say hi and thank you. Keep up the good work. All right, I'll see you later.
Where's he going?
I don't know.
Where'd he go?
I used to watch a lot of like detective shows when I was a kid, and I just remember in a lot of them, like people would get kidnapped and they listen to the audio ransom note, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we heard a train go by, and there was like a boat. Okay, they must be by the docks, by the train tracks. I feel like Rico's being held somewhere, and we need to go help him."
Well, fuck Rico. We just got over Serac, and now you got me Serac. What is this, like Chirac? Now you're gonna you fucked me up already.
I just don't want my mental picture of Rico to be disturbed, because I imagine him looking like Matthew McConaughey in season 1 of True Detective, and that's what I want him to look like. Just got a pack of cigarettes. He pulls up the chair. You heard that chair kind of rubbing against the ground, like the opening scene of Sling Blade, and then he sits down. Maybe he grabs a drink out of the cupboard. You heard that banging. Then he lit up his cigarette. And then he realized he has smoke outside. So he started walking toward the door. That's what was going on there.
Okay, I'm going to set up this shot. I'm the cinematographer, right? So we see Rico. Rico is sitting on a folding chair. The camera pulls away from his back. We see him that he's talking to us. Chair is tapping the floor. He gets up. As the camera pulls away, we see that there's like 13 bodies on the ground. There's like a bat, some different weapons. Rico unlocks the door, walks out in the hall, and says, "Hey, thanks for the podcast." That's what's going on in my mind.
It's very Tarantino of you. That's like very much like a Quentin Tarantino version of this voicemail.
Well, Rico, thank you so much for the voicemail. We enjoyed it, and thank you for your kind words and sticking with us through Westworld and Game of Thrones. We appreciate you listening and calling in. Again, if you guys would like to call in, we do love to hear your voices. It's 914-719-CHAT. It's not as scary as it sounds. It is weird to talk by yourself for 2 minutes. I know. But just imagine us on the other end listening to you and saying, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and let me give you one other option. Use the voice memo feature on your phone. An iPhone, you can record it, you can back it up, you can kind of edit and tweak. Do that and send it as an attachment in an email. That's another option.
That's what I used to do. I couldn't make the 2-minute time limit. I kept getting cut off. So I was like, fuck this. I'm just going to record my own thing and send in like 10-minute diatribes and they can cut it.
Surprise, surprise. You're running long.
Now you get a whole fucking hour. Great.
You're welcome.
Well, that concludes this week's Telegraph for Shat on TV Westworld. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitch at shatontv.com/Twitch. Again, you can join us tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. We'll be live for Shappy Hour and then join Roger on Sunday night immediately after the episode for a live discussion. Again, that's all at shatontv.com/Twitch. On Facebook, just search for Shat on TV Podcast. The website is shatontv.com. You can email us at hosts@shatontv.com. And wherever where fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review. That helps the podcast grow. If you'd like to support the podcast, you also can shop. I forgot to mention that. And that's at shatontv.com/shop. You can get lots of gear. People are still grabbing all sorts of cool stuff and posting it up on Instagram and Twitter. Love to see those, whether it's a Gene Lyons mug or a Dick Ebert shirt. Also, if you haven't checked out our sister podcast, please do and go subscribe. That's Shat the Movies at shatthemovies.com, where we do 80s and 90s movies. Lots of great stuff. As Ash mentioned, right now, City of Lost Children is our most recent release. The entire podcast is in French, so go enjoy that. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, Ashley Schlafly, Roger Roper, and the King Bee, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us on Sunday night for our Instacast covering Westworld Season 3, Episode 7, Passed Upon.